Welcome to today's video where we are going to be going over those post-plant positions on Inferno. If you didn't see the other one, it is on the channel. But obviously there are three factors going into consideration when you think of a post-plant position, which is the peak availability, which is how many angles can you cover. There is the bomb plant visibility, which means how many bomb plant spots do you see. And then there is also the utility susceptibility, which is where do you often get Molotov out of that position? Do they smoke you off in a retake? That sort of thing. So we're going to start with the B bomb site on Inferno. So first off, let's just discuss Banana, I suppose. So Banana, probably one of the more common positions for people to go to. I'm going to separate. This is Banana, by the way, and then this is Cubby. We'll call both of these Cubby because you could go the close one or the further one. So this is now talking about here rather than that side. Okay. So when we think about it, it's pretty common in a retake that the CTs will smoke this part off, which means utility susceptibility is pretty poor. But if they smoke that off, you have a chance to then go to Cubby as well. So it's actually more of a 2-in-1 situation. So the Cubby and Banana, they've got pretty poor utility susceptibility, but you could argue peak availability. It means you can narrow down and choose a choke point, right? So you can confirm there is nobody coming from Banana, which means you can dedicate your focus towards this side of the actual bomb site. And then when it comes to bomb plant visibility, I would easily say that about 80% of the plants are at default, which is here. So that means I think it gives it a higher chance really, because Banana, you are going to sit and look towards that default plant spot. And even if you do get smoked out, generally you can actually guess, like, based on this angle here, that the bomb plant lineup is pretty easy, right? So when you're in that corner, at least, you can just look straight in line. Like if you just go to like this angle here where the wall connects there, that is going to spam and kill anybody going for that default plant typically. Obviously, as I mentioned before, you should only tap it, but I actually think Banana is probably a 9 out of 10 destination for actual post plants, because even if you get smoked, like I say, you can spam the diffuser, but also that is basically all they're going to do. You're probably just going to get smoked. Like, it's very rare that you see them actually push around to clear this like this, and if you do, you're probably hearing them push, and sometimes you get around here and waste even more time, right? So Banana is an easy 9 out of 10, whereas the Cubbies, right, so this is the Cubby, and this is also the Cubby, the same thing, but obviously people separate them by close left or deep left, right? I'm actually going to give these a 7, because obviously the utility thing still classes the same, but if they do not have a smoke, they usually will Molotov that one, right? So that's actually much worse than just being smoked off. And I think that's the big difference, right? The other thing is actually the right-hand peak situation. So if you're this side, of course, Banana, this is why it's slightly better than Cubby, you're right-hand peaking. Like, this is your right hand. It is also their right hand on this side. But if they're coming off of the site, you have the advantage here. Which is why it's so easy to kill that Coffin player usually when you're actually going into Banana. So when we consider that as well, if you're in the Cubby, somebody clears it right hand, okay? So let's consider that I'm in this corner here. This is the furthest out I can see, right? But if they go here in the same vein, they will see me before I see them. That's how a right hand peak works. On this game, if you're going like this into somewhere, you will see them first. So for example here, you can shoot them way before they see you, which is why that's also a negative for these two positions here. So actually I'm going to say Cubby's a 7 out of 10. It's still pretty good, pretty damn good. It's the reason that it is used so often, despite having a lot of drawbacks. But it's still, you know, actually good enough to be considered probably better than average, right? Okay, so as we're just going to go through the site, like just as we run in. So first oranges, I beg of you to never go here on a post plant. This is the worst. This is a 1 out of 10, okay? And it's not just because, like, yeah, it's not like you get mollied out. You'll probably get hit by flashbangs. Like, there's not much you can do about it. But you are a sitting duck. Like, you are very much stuck. When they're coming out of ruins, they're swinging out. They might not be checking specifically for you to be sat there, but it's still a right-hand peak for them. So even if they have quick enough reactions, you are probably going to die. The other part is normally they do flash over that roof, so you will get blinded and there's really not much you can do. But the other thing, same as I said about Cubby, when they go into pit, or Genny, whatever you want to call it, they will clear this and they can shoot you through this. They can see you completely. So even though my peak here, look how much I can see. I can see up to this bit. And then when a player actually goes the opposite side, they will see all of you sticking out here. And they can just spam you. This is why First Oranges isn't great as a CT player as well. It's the same reasoning. which is why people tend to do a flash to try and get out of there, or something a bit different, which is probably that one, I believe. Yeah, like, so they try and do something to just get out of there, because it's such a bad position. Like, the other, like, it's fine that you can see the bomb plants. This is your only peak, and if you're peeking here, then just don't. Please don't. It's really bad. 1 out of 10, disgrace of position. Second up, second orange is not much better, but still better, might add. It's just still a bit better. I'll give it a 4 out of 10 just because you have a bit more space to play with. Like, you can do this. This is a bit of an off angle, right? You might be able to do a bit more with this and actually line yourself up where it's like you're in line with the fountain. They don't see you until they go way further out. You might actually get a drop on somebody and get a kill. But obviously the issue is you go further out, you're now more exposed to this visibility here as opposed to being right up against it. The flashbang will pop in the air, you'll get blinded, you'll probably die. Or you'll sit there blind as a bat and they'll just go, huh, and shoot you. So I'm actually going to give second oranges a 4 out of 10. It's I would actually say it's 4 times better, straight up, 4 times better. We now get to the new box. So back in the days of CSS and 1.6, new box, or at least this area of the bomb site, as well as dark, were considered to be the best, right? Because you could play a crossfire where one of you watches this side and then the other player watches this side. And obviously in those versions of the game, there was no Molotovs. You couldn't just be Molotoved out of these positions. You could sit there and be double naded, but it won't kill you. You just sit there and be like, yep, they might know we're here. But you have this lovely crossfire. So obviously that's why this position isn't as good as it used to be, but there is still a reason why people go there. And that's primarily because it's such a hard position to get clear properly if you do not have Molotovs, right? So a lot of the time when people take the B-bomb site, they actually use a lot of utility getting into the site in the first place. Or actually, like, they do it, like the CTs use a lot during the round, which means that when they go to retake, they might not have the utility to then retake it. So more often than not, you'll find that the pit player probably has a Molotov left, and then they're able to be like, okay, I have to choose, do I Molotov dark or do I Molotov new? And it's like, okay, well, they choose one or the other, coin flip more or less, usually, depending on if there is previous information actually acquired. So dark and new box, I'm going to say new box is slightly better, and that's just because you have a bit, like, the peaks are a bit better. Like, there's a few more different angles here, and actually you can play around this a lot more. Whereas when you're in dark, I mean, you do have like the right hand advantage when they're running into you at least, but you are just a sitting duck more than that side. At least with this side, if you feel like they're pushing you from Coffin, you can start like maneuvering and being like, okay, and then this sort of thing. Whereas dark, you are just stuck. So I'm going to go with a 6 for new box, which I think is quite generous. So you can see all the plants, peak availability is okay, but obviously, as I said, utility bad. And then dark's going to get a 5. Not much to differentiate between the two of them. Obviously, if you have a player in both spots, that actually is really, really good on a post plant, still, in my eyes at least. Especially if you have a smoke, because if you have a smoke, you can cause absolute chaos. You can drop a smoke here, and this is just the worst. As a CT player, you have time, you know, against you already, and it's like, well, you start trying to clear this way, you just need to reposition yourself appropriately. You can toy around so much, right? Okay, so let's carry on going through the website. So Genny, I actually didn't consider this spot to be as good, or actually as a part of the post-plant positions, but it definitely is. And I would say it's more of a 5 sort of area, purely because peak availability, you've got the right-hand swing, fantastic, that's good. Post-plant, I mean, most plant positions, you can see all of them here. But peak availability, you're basically stuck to holding this, and then at worst, you have to do this, which is kind of awkward. But as a T-side player, you have the AK, of course, so you do have a bit of an upper hand at least. So I'm going to stick with a 5 for that. There's quite often as well, we do see people, whether it's grenading around this corner, trying to hit default, which means you sometimes get hit by mistake, or Molotoving, the same thing. But you will probably be hit with, you know, a flashbang coming in, and they will just clear you and kill you. But that is all dependent on if you have a teammate covering you, right? So let's carry on going through the bomb sites. We have Coffin coming up next here. Or I'm going to say Coffin/garden, okay? So let's say this cuts around from here. That's the line for that, and then we'll say garden is up to this point as well. So this whole area is actually being considered for the same spot. So I actually think this is a pretty damn good spot as well. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say this is probably the 10 out of 10 spot. Because you very rarely get smoked off on a retake here. And it's very rare you see a Molotov coming in that way. Usually it's just a flashbang. The only issue you really have is actually making sure that they do not get into ruins, because one, this is actually is a right-hand peak for them on this bit here, and of course you don't really want to be sat here because it's a bit of an awkward spot, because in the previous version of the game, this didn't stick out as much. It used to be a bit more of like a little flower bed, which is where the garden comes from. With this, it actually means you can't be just stuck up, like, right in the corner, like there. Because that would be much better. So, that's probably the only drawback to it. There is, of course, the idea that where they smoke the bomb, but if you're planting, you know, default, you should know it's just like a straight, like, the amount of damage this does when you're spamming it is actually kind of insane as well. So you can easily just spam the bomb and get around with it, or you can play around the bomb a bit more and actually go into ruins. So that gives us our next post-plant spot, which is ruins, right? So, again, I think this is really, really strong, probably one of the more common ones as well. But the drawback, of course, is they tend to pop flash into the ruins when they do take it. So it's something like, what, a double clicker like that? Probably good enough, yeah. And then they will clear you whether you're here, whether you're, you know, holding back here, like a crazy person, I guess. I've never seen somebody really do that. Or this is probably one of the more common ones as well. Nice right-hand peek for you, much more preferred. And it does mean you probably dodge the flashes a bit better. But I will give this an 8 out of 10, just because you do have the chance to go that way, or you can go that way for the post plant fully. Peak availability, you have all of the CT side, and then utility, as I said, it's just that flash you need to be worried about. If they smoke you off, better yet, you might have a chance to go through the smoke and cause absolute chaos, really. So we're now going out to the CT side here. I'm actually going to talk about tree, because this is a bait, right? Some people will have a CT smoke here, and then on the take, they all walked out to here. This wasn't as bad in CSS or previous versions of the game, because CSS actually had a left-hand peek, if I remember correctly, which meant that you had the advantage on this. However, in CSGO, as I said, right-hand peek, they see you well before you see them. Plus, it's only really good if you have teammates to assist you. So if you're at tree, you should probably ask for a teammate to do a flash over, or better yet, a smoke deeper. Well, better one than that. Actually, it's not too bad, but a bit better, maybe towards the right or more this area. And that would be perfect. That means you can actually segregate the entire bomb site off right here. This would be great. You can then actually play a bit more around the area. This position here as well, it's a bit good, it's a bit unexpected. I'm going to give tree a 2, but that's primarily because of the issues, like I said. The peak availability, you're a bit stuck. There's a right-hand peak for them, not for you. And then we're actually going to talk about deep CT. So this is incredibly niche, because the only time you see somebody go beyond this point is when that bomb is planted there. However, for that reason, I think it's one of those, the same as Pit, where you can actually still play the bomb quite well. Because, of course, when you're holding this, if you're going here, you probably have control CT, or you're expecting them here and you're holding for a quick rotate. You might get an easy kill here, and then clear that side as well. Boom, you've got CT. And then you've got your plant here, which is great. The only issue, of course, is utility susceptibility. So again, if they then smoke CT, for example, you're going to be a bit screwed, because you have to spam through a smoke. But if you've planted actually for yourself properly, it shouldn't be an issue. Right? If you plant right against this, rather than people plant on the steps, I think planting it right against here would be better. Just because that statement I said before, with the diffuse radius, if you plant it in the center here, they've got a full circle, which is the worst possibility. Whereas against the box, you've actually got a much smaller, probably what, 200 degrees, 220 degrees, something like that, something smaller. A lot easier to spam that line compared to the previous ones. So I'm going to give Deep CT a 3, mainly because of its actual niche, actual use. I will say it's a bit better than Tree, of course. So we're actually going to move on to the other bomb site now as well. So the A bomb site's a bit of a funny one. Oh, actually, we'll start this side. In fact, we'll start this side. So library, same as the Deep CT concept, right? I'm going to give it a 3 as well, because it does have its uses, but I think this one's probably a bit worse when it comes to being smoked off. Because usually they'll either smoke here, or they'll smoke actually in the doors, which means you have to push out and you get screwed. So, if we keep on going through, library's going to get a 3 just because you might have an absolute niche plant where it's like, you've planted, I don't know, what even is the better one? I guess it's not in this corner. It's literally just in line with that library. It's not, it's very expected. If you plant there, they're expecting you that way anyway. So they will use the utility, which is why it is a 3. If we're then going to talk about arch as well, again, you're usually playing here if it's a bit of a funny plant, because if it's planted default, you're a fool for going there. Because you'll tap it, or they'll tap it, and then you'll peek out, and then they get a right-hand swing. You probably lose the fight. However, I'm still going to say it's better than library, just because if you're already here, you've probably cleared a whole section that they can come from. You do also have the opportunity to wrap this way as well, which is, you know, if it is a default plant, that might be the way to actually save the round. And then we're actually going to go for, let's see, we'll go towards Graveyard actually. This is another bait position. So Graveyard is going to be counting the steps plus this upper part. So the upper part, not good. Bait, complete bait. Right, I'm going to give Graveyard a 2, first off. First off, you're getting blinded by every single flashbang when you go that way. And people, as CTs, they like to clear up this way as well. They like to go like this and then clear this fully. So you're probably going to get cleared before some of these site players, perhaps. But if you do have a player on site covering you from that side, you might be able to do something special. But still, a flash from anywhere will get you. And that's kind of one of the issues. The other part is, when you're actually playing this one, you can be seen by so many different angles that you do not know about. Like they can see you on the balcony when you're here, and I can't see anything up there. Like, they can shoot me in the back, I can't see or hear them or anything like that. It's really awful. So that's a solid 2 out of 10. I'm then going to go into Pit. So I think Pit is a 10 out of 10. Okay, this Pit is this line here, all this part. Perfect for post plants, a lot of area to play around with. Utilities can be used on you, but you also have the opportunity to use some good utility yourself, right? You can throw some good flashes out. You can actually Molotov the bomb very easily if you're playing like here. You can just go, you know, probably whack it off the wall a bit better than that, but you know, you can do a lot of stuff from here. Whether it's actually getting Molotovs on the bomb or just Molotovs to actually get, you know, gap closed, that sort of thing. Even Graveyard, when they try and clear you, you probably do have the advantage because they have to sometimes jump to see you. So it's a bit of an interesting one. So next up is actually going to be the below balcony pit, right? So some people will call this mini pit just because, like, this is big pit, little pit. But some people, of course, call this mini pit as well because of the old 1.6 little pit being here. So this area, in my mind, is definitely one of the harder locations to clear. And then when it comes to utility, it's actually really difficult to block it off per se, right? So you do often see a smoke landing like there on a retake of some kind, right? But you rarely see them block off this angle, which is kind of interesting. Like, if you're actually keen enough for a retake where you do have a smoke from both sides, then fair enough, Godspeed to you. But this angle is usually left open, which is perfect for a T-site post plant, because from here, of course, it's actually really good, because on a T-side player you have an AK, which means you do have one-shot headshot from a lot of the range, which is perfect, right? Because this is a headshot angle, so you're able to just, you know, bup, 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 easy, right? Headshots galore. The issue with it is that it's very rare that you're going to be able to play this where your peak availability is just there, for one. But then also, bomb plant wise, you're never going to be able to play a post plant properly, I feel. If it's like, they're pushing up quad, and they know you're there, it's like, you'll probably get one, and then it's like a one and done, most likely. Like, it's very rare that you do see it. I'm still going to give it, it's not a bad position, I'm still going to be giving it a 7. Or an 8. I think it's like a 7.5. It's up there by a long shot, but it's like not as good as that side because you can toy around a lot more here and actually play the time a lot better. But this is very much a case of you kill or you get killed, whereas that one could be you die, or you get kills, you die, or you win the round through bomb explosion. Okay, so like this is a 7.5, let's say. Okay, so we're now going to move towards apps, which this is of course the bait position as well. This is just like tree. I feel like there is a certain circumstances where this is great, but more often than not, it is absolute bait. So peak availability, you can hold this, which fine, you might be able to get a kill or two, but it's a very slim gap. You'd be very fortunate or very incredibly skilled if you were actually able to catch a kill properly here on the retake, especially because normally there is a smoke like on the floor towards the mini pit area. The only situations I can see this being useful really is in a 1v1 where we're able to play, or 1v2 maybe, where you're able to play the post plant on default really, really well. If the bomb is planted safe, awful, like really bad. And if they do know you're in apps, chances are they are going to smoke that, Molotov it, you know, anything that will just be an absolute nuisance to you. I am going to give apartments a 1, like flat out a 1. It's the same thing as the tree on like B-side, like I said. People get sucked into it because it's like, well, this is a lot of cover. I can play a lot of time here. But more often than not, it's so hard to peek through and get kills. Like, really difficult. I do think it is a bit of a bait. So let's now go on to the site. So, if I remember correctly, this is actually called the Coldzera box. And I think it's okay, right? Like, I'm going to give it a 6. Because, one, you've got really good peekability because you can sit like this, or you can sit all the way in the corner and actually see all the way into graveyard. But more often than not, there is the nice little smoke that people throw, which just, it's a bit higher up, I think, than that. But they normally smoke mini pit, which means you'll actually just be able to cover the smoke run through. But if you do cover the smoke run through, flash is coming over the top, you will get absolutely blinded usually, because the flashes will probably land in this sort of area here. You're not going to get Molotov'd off in this position, that's one thing for sure. But what you might do is you might get spammed, because that goes right through. So interesting enough, some people do actually spam this on a retake, like either just doing that just to scare them. And then there is also the side where this is again a right hand peek, so if they know you're there, they will see you before you see them when they're swinging like this. So it's still a 6 out of 10 because I do think there is a nuance to it where you could have a really good setup where it's like you're on here and your teammate's here. Like this is called Apex, just in case people don't know, because there was a setup where NBK and Apex back in the Vitality days, I guess technically, where they would play here and then here, or even the G2 days actually going further back. Because yeah, NBK never played. I actually don't even remember now. It's been so long, and there's been so many iterations of those French lineups. But it was a nice little crossfire setup between the two of them here. But if you had on post plant a player there watching Arch, you're watching quad / short, and then you actually do have the apartment run out as well. It's actually a pretty good spot. Same goes though for the utility, like the flashbangs landing in the air, you are probably going to get blinded, but you might have enough time to turn them or position yourself where you do not get blinded. So I'm still going to give this a 6. And then there's actually the center of a site. So the center of a site for me is like this sort of line here to then there. Okay, so this is common for safe plants or perhaps up against the single ones. I actually think this is a really good position just because there's a lot of maneuverability. Same thing as pit, right? I'm going to give this an actual 8, by the way, just so you know. Okay, so flashbangs will probably get you, but you should be able to see them and be able to turn them, or better yet, play anti-flash and be able to then peek up and head shangles. Even then, if you do get blinded, you can probably crouch and do this or that. Like, there's so many good spots for you to actually cover behind, which is actually such an underrated part of post-plant positions where, like, if you have cover yourself, you might be able to even delay their utility being good by being able to hide or tuck in. So this is actually going to get an 8 from me, because even if they're coming around quad, obviously this is still a left-hand peek into their right. I still think this is a pretty damn good spot because it's kind of an off angle to some extent, and even if you know they're both coming quad, you can actually get behind the single box and start playing a bit more. Yeah, annoying is actually the word I'll go for, a bit annoying. So, pretty solid, and then this, of course, is just another... I don't know, it's like... It's not bad, but it is very... You're stuck, is the main thing. You are kind of stuck. Like, fine, you can see the run out on apps, and usually you'll probably sit like this. Leaves the room for the utility to get you fine. But it's more often than not, you're probably going to maybe get a kill and then die. Like, it's like a one and done. If they know you're in that corner, it's going to be really difficult for you to get another kill. Despite it being like a case where you are right hand peeking, it will be quite difficult. So I'm actually going to give the corner probably a 4. To be honest, I think it's actually pretty okay. You won't be able to see default plant from there, but if you're playing in that position, it's probably planted here, which means you can jump up the box, or better yet, you can actually just swing out if you need to. But if they get into that bit of that bit of the bomb site, you're probably in a position where you've already seen them, they've seen you, really. So I think that'll probably cover it for all these. Like, I'm not going to bother mentioning this spot because it's very... I wouldn't consider it to be a regular default, like a plant spot, not plant spot, post plant position even. Like, because it's so... Like, it's not bad, but I do think it's another one of those positions where you probably get a one and done. I consider that these are probably two the same, really. Like, they're probably both 4s, with this one probably being slightly worse due to the fact that they usually crouch up against the box and people either run around clearing it, or they actually just jump up and then just kill you straight away. But I think that's going to be it for this one. Like, it's covered, what, like 10 or 11 post-plant positions on both bomb sites, with ratings of 1 to 10. If you have any thoughts or actual questions about this as well, feel free to throw them in the comment section below, because I am willing to actually talk through, or maybe some expansions on why, or thoughts on, why did I decide to think that that's that bad, or anything like that, really. Just hit me up with anything, really. I'll respond to anything you actually have to inquire about. So, thank you for watching.